Alright, we're in. This is take two because I had to turn down the music a little bit. But anyhow, guys, what's up? We're back. I got a bit of a different video for y'all this time because with Any Open Round 1 going on right now and me still trying to, start team building again, I am a little bit more hesitant to record, frequent PS Lives. I want to make sure that I can start grinding out a whole bunch of teams before I start, going back to the workshop and grinding them out. But this is definitely inspired by Finch's recent video on fairy types and OU. I want to go over ghost types and Innu. I wrote an article for Smogon's Flying Press, which I guess I could link below if you want to check that out recently, on Cofagrigus and why it is such a dominant defensive Pokemon in the tier, or dominant Pokemon in general. And I was writing that article, I started thinking to myself, you know what? As a whole, ghost types are really prominent in the tier. There are a lot of them. And I've got this little thing sorted here on how I would personally tier ghost types as a whole. As you can see, we got 9 right here. Theoretically, you could use a couple others as well that I don't have mentioned here. And I might mention them at the end. But these are the ones that I would say definitely have a niche in the tier. So, I guess the first thing over would be why are ghost types so good? I've talked about this a lot in my videos in general. But Ghost, alongside Dark, is one of the best offensive typings ever. Ever since going back to Gen 6, where they nerfed the hell out of Steel types, which I assume was because of Aegislash's release. They were trying their best to make it a little bit more toned down. And if you're aware of Smogon's tiering history, you would know it didn't work. Aegislash had been Ubers both in Gen 6 and 7, until they finally toned down the power on it this gen by nerfing both King's Shield and some of its stats. But Ghost got really good when they nerfed Steel, because it meant there was one less defensive type that could actually switch into it. As a whole, Ghost doesn't really have good switch-ins in terms of resistances. Normal's obviously immune to it, and you have the Dark that resists it. That's really all I can think of. I'm probably missing something. Let me see, actually, does this command work? / resist ghost. Ghost, resistance. Okay, well, that's what ghost, that just goes for ghost in general, but as you can tell, even defensively, ghost is pretty okay. It's immune to these types, resists these, it's only weak to that. But when you look at offensively, that's really where it shines. With so few Pokemon that can reliably switch into Ghost-type attacks, it's really easy for some of the offensive variants to get out of control. And if you look at this list, you're going to see mostly offensive Ghost types, right? You see Rotom, you see, up here this is Gourgeist, it's small, Silvally Ghost, Golurk, Frostlass, Cursola even, and then this is Gorg Super? And I'm not sure how I'm going to talk about that yet, but we'll come to it when we get to it. But yeah, it's super easy for Ghost types to just throw out their attacks without much punishment. A lot of them have really good dual stabs as well. You see Rotom has its electric type attacks, Gourgeist has its grass, Golurk's got ground type attacks, Frostlass ice. Just as a whole, they're so good offensively. And the DLC only furthered that by giving a lot of these ones Poltergeist. Gourgeist small, Golurk, and Frostlass were huge beneficiaries of that. Mostly because they lacked a great physical ghost move. Frostlass didn't even have one. The funny thing about Frostlass is this, and I'm not going to go too in-depth into this now, but look at the attacking stats, they're the same. But you never saw physical Frostlass until Poltergeist came out, so it's been a huge buff for a lot of them. And I just want to go over each of these ghost types real quick. Maybe not real quick, but I want to go over each of them, and I just want to talk about why they're so good. So we'll start with our S ranks. We got Kofa and Rotom. Now, Cofagrigus, as talking about my article, it's quite literally one of the best defensive Pokemon in the tier. You could probably argue that it is the best, because of how many Pokemon it just shuts down. I like to drop this in chat a lot of time when people are talking about Pokemon and why they think they're good. One of the main things that each offensive Pokemon has to survive is what I call the Cofagrigus vibe check. If you can't break Cofagrigus, you're not a good Pokemon. At least if you're offensive. You're just not. It's such a good Pokemon. It's so common because it just shuts down so many things. Pokemon that are not as good as they would be otherwise because of Cofagrigus. Sock. That Pokemon would probably be near broken without Kofa in the tier. Toxicroak. Probably would be near broken without this in a tier. And in general, just physical attackers like Boltooned. In general, Boltoon's issues are ground types, so Kofa's one of them. Something like Dreadnought, Dougie Alola, Gourgeist, pre-Poltergeist, and even now, I'm gonna talk about some stuff with that. Girder, if you don't have Toxic, which pretty much none do, I think it's an okay option, but that can't get by you. Malamar, it's a Dark type, it can't get by you. There's just so many Pokemon that Kofa just arbitrarily just walls, because look how bulky this thing is. This is insane! Look at this. It's so hard to take out. And beyond this Pokemon just being super great defensively, it's also really pretty darn versatile in terms of what it can run. The most common set you'd see right now is a setup variant. Generally, you're looking at Iron Defense sets, because Body Press is a very fun move. And between fighting and then a Ghost-type attack, Shadow Ball being the one that you're pretty much always going to see. I don't think I've ever seen anyone drop Shadow Ball in that set. It's just really, really, really hard to successfully wall. And beyond that, these sets can either just take a dump all over offensive teams. They can run Trick Room, which makes them just a pain in the ass to stop. You can see as well Rest, and I think Rest is super good right now. Having all that longevity is just so great. It also means that a lot of Pokemon that would deal with you by like poisoning you. I can't think of any right now. Pylo being the only one that really comes to my mind immediately. But that's no longer means. Oh, Clefairy too. Most Clefairies are knockoff right now, but Toxic's still really good. And it just makes that form of counterplay pretty much Newt. Not Newt. Null. I'm sorry. I probably sound winded right now. I just came back from a run. And it's about like thunderstorm outside. So I had to really get back quickly. But beyond just Iron Defense sets, you also have Nasty Plot, which is ridiculously good, whether you run Trick Room, 3 attacks with Energy Ball and Body Press as your coverage. Body Press is a weird move probably to hear, because you're boosting special attacking it, you still have a physical move, not in the traditional sense of physical, but a physical move. Hitting Dark types harder is always good. Or even if you just go Rest. It's not very common, but Rest is okay if you really need Cofagrigus to have that longevity on your team. I believe Finch brought it during one of his SS games this NUPL. But it's a nice filler that also goes to show how good Kofa is in terms of versatility. And then something that has admittedly fallen off, but is still really good, I would say. Not really good, but still good, is just generic defensive set. A generic defensive set. Cofagrigus just has a lot of utility through moves like Will-O-Wisp, Toxic Spikes, Pain Split, I guess you could count as well in there. Hell, you could even just run Toxic. And it's just in general really hard mon to break. It's sacrificing a lot of your potential to take over games, obviously, but it still is good at just sitting around and being annoying. You even have moves like Knockoff and Haze that Haze doesn't really see any usage. It's more me just thinking, this could be okay in certain scenarios. But like Knockoff has even seen some niche usage. Overall, this Pokemon's just so versatile, and it kind of just puts a stop to a lot of offensive Pokemon in the tier. Again, this is the Pokemon you have to look at if you are going to try to run an offensive Pokemon in the tier, I think. I mean, it's not like a Pokemon that can't break Kofa isn't going to be good. We saw Gourgeist Small pre-Poltergeist be one of the best breakers in the tier. But it is a huge reason why a lot of Pokemon aren't as good as they would be. The next Pokemon we'll look at is Rotom, which is a much more recent drop that obviously I have been using very extensively since it dropped. Rotom's dominance in Inu dates back a couple generations now, and it's just so good right now even. It's lost Z-moves, it's lost Signal Beam even, which really wasn't used at all since Gen 6 back when you needed that for Malamar. But this Pokemon's really good. Offensively, Electric Ghost is really hard to deal with. And this generation, Rotom got Nasty Plot, which means even Pokemon like Clefairy, Stunfisk, Galar, these are not consistent checks to you because you can just boost up in front of them. There's really not a whole lot they can do back to you. Clef Knockoff hurts, and it can poison you, but it lets Rotom break through so many Pokemon that normally, in previous generations, it would not have been able to get by as reliably. And of course, you have Trick utility still, which is super great. Being able to cripple even like those answers just makes choice sets so annoying to deal with. A lot of these Pokemon will switch into your Volt Switch, and if you just catch up with a Trick, they're pretty much removed for the rest of the game. Their longevity gets crippled, and either Rotom or a teammate of Rotom's gets to just break through them. But offensively, it's pretty obvious that Rotom is so good. I mean, look, these two are pretty much unresisted, I think. I can't think of a type combination that takes this on all the time. But defensively, I think it's a big reason Rotom shines. Last gen, Sun and Moon and one of my favorite sets on Rotom was Pinch Berry on defensive utility sets with Defog. Now, obviously, the Pinch Berries are nerfed, but those sets are still so good. The amount of utility you get from Rotom, despite its bulk not being the best, is insane, because Defog plus Willis plus Volt Switch, yes please. That is insane utility for a game. You get pivoting support, you get status, you get entry hazard control, and you get to take advantage of Rotom's just godly defensive typing, gifting it like 3 immunities when you take into account Levitate, ground, normal, and fighting, yes please. Resistance of flying, yes please. It does so much just as a glue Pokemon, like more balanced / offensive leaning builds. It also is a check to some common Pokemon as a result, like Toxicroak, like Sock. Sort of Scyther, but it requires you to have Colbur intact and for it not to be Swords Dance. Scyther's an incredibly annoying Pokemon, and being able to at least shove on a Pokemon that soft checks it is always going to be appreciated. And you have stuff like Butterfree, which can just always be kind of scary. It keeps that in check. Kind of Girder, but not really. It's just, it does so much. Also resists Steel, which, this Pokemon's not common, but it's nice to have. Checks Magneton as well, which is another Pokemon that's not super common. I haven't seen a lot of Magneton. But Rotom checking it by resisting all of its attacks, or being immune to it in the case of like Tri-Attack if you run into one of those, is just so helpful. So these are our S-ranks, and I think it's pretty evident why these two are so good. Most of it comes down to versatility and like applicability to teams. Neither of these Pokemon are very difficult to fit onto a team. They offer just so much. And while you could argue with Kofa it is a bit more limited in terms of archetypes, I think the archetypes on which Kofa goes on, which is still a hefty amount, like whether it's like a defensively oriented build, a balanced build, or like a bulky offense build, so I think Rotom pretty much fits on everything other than like hard stall. Kofa's still super easy to just find those builds. So now we're going to look at our A ranks. And we're going to start off with Gourgeist Small, a Pokemon that did come up for a ban vote, which may make some of y'all think, why didn't I put this in S rank? I still don't, come on, I voted no ban on it, and I don't view it on the same level as Rotom and Kofa still. I think you can make the case for it, but I view it more in line with Silvally Ghost, which is another just really kind of annoying offensive ghost type to deal with. So, okay, first we want to start off before the DLC. Gourgeist is already a really great Pokemon. Between Shadow Sneak, Trick on like Choice Scarf sets with like Explosion, Destiny Bond, and it's just generally good speed tier plus defensive typing, Gourgeist offered a lot to teams. It could soft check stuff like Silvally Water back when that was super prominent, outsped the Silvallies in general, meaning it could always revenge kill them regardless of its set, whether it was Scarf or just a Life Orb set. And also Synthesis, which is super good on a wall breaker. Being able to keep your breaker around throughout the course of the game, so that it always poses a threat to the opposition, is amazing. And of course Will-O-Wisp for just spreading status. I mean, stuff like Silvally Dragon if it wanted to try to pivot into a Power Whip. Drampa, when that was around, you could at least burn it, which was better than just Power Whipping it as it switched in and got, its Sap Zipper to say nope, no damage at all. It just further added to the amount that Gourgeist had at its disposal to cause issues for the opposition. But now, as I already mentioned earlier, it has this move, Poltergeist. This solves the biggest problem Gourgeist had, which is its lack of a reliable ghost stab attack. Previously, you were running either Shadow Sneak or like Phantom Force, if you wanted a ghost move. Shadow Sneak was great, obviously. It let Gourgeist revenge kill a lot of Pokemon regardless of the set it had, because if you were a Life Orb, you were no longer relying on outspeeding stuff. This lets you at least pose a bit of a threat to a +1 speed Silvally, let you revenge kill something like a boosted Rapidash, let you outspeed something like Scarf Rotom, let you avoid Sucker Punch Toxicroak from picking you off. It was just generally a really nice move to have anyway. But if you wanted a strong one, you were going with Phantom Force. And that really only saw usage on these like Subseed sets that were never very common. I know Hoenn Confirmed brought Subtoxic, Leech Seed, Phantom Force, Gourgeist like once in an UPL, and I don't think it really did anything. It's a good set, but it's pretty niche, and in general, a lot less consistent because there's more Pokemon that kinda just don't care about it. But Poltergeist removes a lot of counterplay to Gourgeist. Previously, what you would have would be like Rotom Fan looking to check you. Not anymore. I mean, Silvally Dragon, Silvally Fire even, these aren't consistent answers anymore. You've got a move that can very reliably two-shot them. Eldegoss, it's doing a lot. Life Orb Poltergeist does, like, just a bit under 50, depending on how you EV. You can't drop much defense to prevent a 2-hit KO from being possible. I think you have to run at least 244 plus, like a defense boosting nature, to maintain not letting a 2-hit KO happen at all. It just removes so much counterplay to Gourgeist, because a lot of these Pokemon that are formerly decent neutral switch-ins, you know, like these like blanket checks, they're at a much greater risk of being overwhelmed now. And even something like Avalugg, which, yeah, it could take Power Whip, it could take Poltergeist, it could take like even Rock Slides and Explosions. This mon has Fire Blast. Even something like Dubwool, I mean, I don't think Fire Blast is a particularly great amount, but it does have to, you know, be cautious about getting chipped down too much. The Poltergeist edition was such a huge buff for Gourgeist. And I want to talk about Silvally Ghost. This was a Pokemon I was super hyped for when it originally dropped. I'd been wanting to use it, and I was actually considering getting into RU to use it there. But it eventually just got to a point where it was so bad in RU. Not bad, but like not nearly as good in RU as it used to be, and it was like, well, that kind of ruins the appeal. Hopefully it'll be good down here. And it's been good. Day of Wrong, it's been good. But it's not been as good as I wanted it to be. Silvally Dark is just kind of better. Skuntank also exists, which does bother it a little bit. So it's a little bit disappointing, but it's still a great Pokemon. Especially on hyper offense builds. I think that's really where Silvally Ghost excels. In general, Ghost isn't a bad defensive typing at all, but it's not the best. I think Dark, if you're looking at the Silvallies, is just better defensively because of it resisting Ghost. Because it resisting Ghost and resisting Dark as well. It's just really huge on a lot of the kinds of builds you would try to justify one of these two on. But this is really good on more offensive builds, because one, it can function as a spin blocker, and two, it's a fighting immunity. It's not that it can't be fighting, it just straight up is. And some of these more offensive builds do struggle with CC spam from like the likes of Sock, or even just like a Toxicroak trying to spam you down with Focus Blast or Scarf Cross Chop. It's really good at shutting those kinds of things down. It finds a lot of challenges to set up as well on such mons. And it, in general, just provides so much momentum to these teams. I think Veil offense is probably the best kind of build for Silvally Ghost. And whether you're giving those teams U-turn support, which is also a good neutral move to have for, like, say, Skuntank, super effective coverage even for Silvally Dark, and also provide Boom, which is just a nice way to immediately remove a threat. There's really not a whole lot to say about Silvally Ghost, really. A lot of the benefits to it are applicable to every Silvally form. It's just got a stupidly strong multi-attack. It benefits from having one of the best offensive typings in the game. Overall, just well-rounded stats. Yeah, this mod's really good. I think a mixed set is maybe even possible with like Workup and Flamethrower, because Flamethrower hits what, like Pharaoh Seed, which could be a little bit annoying. I say a little bit annoying mostly because like Flame Charge is a weak as hell move. It also means that you're getting hit harder by Gyro. But it's possible. I will check that PM later. Leave me alone. But these are the A ranks. You see they're a bit a step below these, mostly because of set diversity, and at times being a little bit harder to fit on teams. Gourgeist is weird because its defensive typing is great, but like a special bulk being poor, plus the fact it's a physical attacking, wall breaking grass type means it's not a Scald Switch-in. A lot of the time you'd like it to be a Scald Switch-in, honestly, when you're putting it on a team. So that kind of sucks for it. And so Silvally Ghost, at least in my experiences, it hasn't been a great Pokemon in terms of how many builds can I fit this thing on. So those keep these from being as good as Kofa and Rotom. Now we're going to look at B ranks. And I'm going to talk about both of Golurk and Froslass at the same time, because they really have gotten a lot better for the same reasons, and that's move tutors. Poltergeist to get in specific. Poltergeist really opens up Golurk to drop Iron Fist in favor of no guard, so kind of like Stone Edge or Dynamic Punch. Previously, you're working off of Shadow Punch is your best like ghost type move, and it wasn't bad with Iron Fist. I think it got it up to like an 84 base power move pre-stab. And that's not bad, but it's also not great. I meant that Golurk was a bit easier to play around, especially depending on what its last move was, be it like Ice Punch, Heat Crash, or Stone Edge. The Poltergeist, just again, much like Gourgeist, it means that so many of these neutral targets are much less reliable. While Froslass, same thing. Physical sets previously were not really that possible. You lacked a good ghost move. Ice moves, you had Icicle Crash. You still had Ice Shard as well, but you just had a better special move pool. And so you see if you were going to go like offensive last, you'd see like Sub-Split, you'd see like Specs, maybe even Scarf. Those were just better offensively. Also, thank you guys for cheering me on in chat, except for this. But Poltergeist Edition has let Froslass run these choice band sets. And not only Poltergeist, but here's a little fun with Triple Axle. This move is really strong, especially if you get the 3 hits. And it's really opened up the potential for choice band sets with utility moves like not Wisp, but like Spikes, Trick, Ice Shard all being really good. And helping further solidify the amount of roles Froslass can play. Choice band sets are just in general really good at breaking down defensive teams. Not defensive teams, but defensive Pokemon. Because Ice Ghost isn't too bad offensively. She's more of a rager. Excuse you? Okay. Let me, oh, no. But the TLDR with these two is that they've gotten a lot better because of these move tutor moves. This is a trend that you're probably picking up on. Move tutors have helped a lot of Pokemon. But so, why are these two down in B? Because they've benefited a lot. There's a few reasons for that. Also, that was an awkward silence. I'm sorry. Froslass is still kind of weak. I mean, Poltergeist is great, but there are a lot more Pokemon I feel that can pivot safely around Froslass because base 80 attack isn't that amazing. And Ice and Ghost, I feel like there are in general more resistances, at least to Ice. It's not like Golurk, which has Ground in Ghost, with Ground being just a lot worse to try to pivot around. Is if you don't have a resist or an immunity, something's getting chunked. And then the Frailty is a little annoying. Froslass has, you know, again, it's a Ghost type, so resist fighting. But resisted hits even are going to do a fair amount. And I do think that dropping moves like Taunt, like Debond even, like Wisp, does kind of hurt, at least on Froslass's utility. I think sub-split sets are really cool right now. Kutsuyo was talking about them earlier, but they're just really good at forcing switches, and then, you know, you can get that sub up, and people start to get really scared when you have a sub up with a wall breaker. They don't know what to do. And while Golurk is super scary as a wall breaker, you know, choice band sets are kind of cool. Offensive stealth rocks are kind of cool. This is not a number you want to play around. 381 is not a number you want to play around. And it has good defensive utility. Its bulk is not bad at all. 89, 80, 80. It's good. Defensive typing is great. Slap a Colbur Berry on there, you know, you're not weak to knock. It's really the speed. It's a problem. It suffers from I am slow wall breaker syndrome, wherein it can be a little hard to get in safely, because if your opponent plays aggressively versus you and does not let you get Golurk in for free, you're just going to constantly cede momentum to the other player. Makes it a lot less potent of a wall breaker if you just can't get it in and guarantee that you're threatening something in the opposing team. And now we're going to look at the other B rank Corsola. I think I could have justified putting it into C rank in terms of ghost types. And then maybe dropping Gork Super to D as like just, here's this other ghost type that kind of exists in the tier. Not really, but kind of. But I don't want to put it here because Cursola's had a fairly distinct niche in general throughout NU this gen so far. as a really good Suicide lead on Hyper offense teams, even if Dreadnought is debatably a bit better right now. Shadow Ball plus Hydro Pump gives us a really good matchup against a lot of potential leads. Hydro Pump obviously dealing with stuff like Zendaconda, Stunfisk, Piloswine. In general, Cursel's just so strong that you don't want to be pivoting around it really, as it's just chunking your team with stab Shadow Balls. Stealth Rock support being able to guarantee that, and having weak armor to make this thing like kind of annoying to play around defensively is really good. And if you're on like Timid max, I think you need Timid, because I believe that's how after a weak armor activation and an Endure you outspeed everything you need to. I might be misremembering and you can go Modest, but it's just really reliable in terms of guaranteeing rocks and then just even breaking for your team. It's pretty obviously B in my eyes because there's not much that it does outside of that. Spec sets just kind of, like, there's no reason to run them. They're faster options, pretty much. And there gets to be a point at which you're not in need of the extra damage because it's not enough to influence, like, Okos at all. Defensive sets have seen some use, but I haven't seen a defensive Curse since, like, March or early April. So I think it's safe to say that those have more or less died off. Maybe they still have a use. You could try some weird Perish trapping set with Whirlpool and hoping you activate... Oh, it's not a percent chance, it's just a guaranteed... Okay, so you could try some niche set with like Whirlpool Perish body. But it's just really not a whole lot else this mon does. But because of how effective that it is / has been on both Veil offense and Spike Stack offense as a Suicide lead, I put it in B. Because I think it is pretty reliable at what it does. And now we look at pretty much the most niche options. I'm not even sure if Gorga super needs to be here. But these are ghost types that you really don't see much for a couple reasons. So when we have Drifblim. And Drifblim just... Honestly, it has an oddly decent amount of sets that I've seen used. But none of them are that great. So I'm going to talk about offensive sets first, because I've actually seen those a lot more often as of late. Where there were some, like... some of those terrain seeds you'd see used, like Calm Mind for Unburden activating, and trying to use this as a sweeper. I saw a good amount of this with Indeedee, but Indeedee's banned now. And I have seen this used a couple times with Thwackey, maybe only by Hone confirmed. But it's not bad. Shadow Ball plus Thunderbolt's pretty decent coverage, but it's just kind of weak. You know, 90... I mean, if you max this out, you get this at +1, it's just... it's not bad, but it's not great. I've seen Flare Boost from Poe, and that also gets trick utilities. So something like Clefairy, you can just neuter it. You know, it can't Toxic you because you just get burned by your Flame Orb. But it's not great. There was a lot of hype back when Inu had like 2 Defoggers and 3 Spinners that all sucked around potential defensive sets because it got Strength Sap this gen, but those never really took off. It's not frail, but its defensive typing leads a lot to be desired. Because stuff like this doesn't switch into Knock well, really. That's pretty much what happens. And once you lose your boots, you're just not very scary anymore from a defensive standpoint. It really just, at the end of the day, Drifblim really just struggles to do a whole lot to differentiate itself. You can use it on teams. I think probably offensive sets are the way to go at this point. I think defensive ghost types are better off looking towards something like a Rotom, something like a Kofa. And it's just really, it's hard to slot this on a team as your defogger of choice. And then when you look at Goryeo Super, right now, this is ranked for defensive sets. But the last time I saw a defensive Goryeo Super was when Rhydon was in the tier. And that was in like March. Maybe it was still in tier in April, I don't remember. It's been, several months. But it wasn't very good even then. Again, mostly just because it could check Rhydon despite Heat Crash's addition. I think you could take 2, maybe? I might be misremembering. I feel like this has always been more of an on-paper usable Pokemon than an in practice. Because on defensive builds, you pretty much always see like Goss or Kofa as your defensive grass or your defensive ghost type respectively. And I can't really even see this being used much as an offensive ghost type, despite Poltergeist. Because, I don't know, Gorgeist Small is just better, perhaps? Golurk and Frostlass are just better, perhaps? Like, it just doesn't do anything differently. It's slow as well. Even slower than Golurk, man. It's a whole base point slower. Which doesn't really mean a whole lot. But, like, it's a little depressing. There's just not a whole lot that Gorgeist Super does to differentiate itself from everything else. I think it's always going to end up suffering in that respect as a result. Yeah, I think that's it, guys. Again, just to have this visualized, this is how I'd rank all the ghost types right now that I perceive as at least viable or usable or really good with respect to these like 4 up here. Let me know in the comments what y'all think. I think you could justify Gorg up here. I think you could maybe argue one of these two into the A ranks. But overall, I think ghost types are super great right now. Whether it's offensively, because that's, as you see in this, it's mostly because of how good these are offensively, or even in a couple cases for their defensive merit, multiple ghost types have found really solid spots in the tier. And I don't see that changing unless we get a heavy influx of like normal types and dark types into the tier. Anyway guys, that's it for me. I'll see y'all guys next time. Peace.